Tonight, we're going to drift gently into one of the most essential, yet most misunderstood experiences of human life. Sleep. Not just sleep as rest, not sleep as collapse at the end of a long day, but sleep as a profound biological state, carefully shaped by evolution, deeply tied to the brain, and absolutely necessary for who we are, how we feel, how we think, and how we survive. So settle in. Let the noise of the day soften. Allow your breathing to slow just a little. And as the world outside fades, we'll explore why the brain needs sleep, not as an optional habit, but as a fundamental requirement of being human. Section 1. The quiet necessity of sleep every night. Without exception, the human brain reaches a point where staying awake becomes impossible. No matter how motivated, determined, or alert someone believes themselves to be, sleep eventually takes over. This isn't weakness. It isn't laziness. It isn't a failure of discipline. It is biology asserting itself in the quietest, most persistent way. Sleep is one of the few experiences shared by almost every living creature with a nervous system complex enough to process the world. Mammals sleep, birds sleep, reptiles sleep. Even creatures very distant from humans on the evolutionary tree show periods of reduced awareness and organized rest. This alone tells us something important. If sleep were optional, evolution would have removed it long ago. From a survival standpoint, sleep is risky. A sleeping animal cannot scan for danger. Reaction times are slower. Muscles are relaxed. Awareness fades. And yet, despite these disadvantages, sleep has been preserved and refined over millions of years. That means the benefits of sleep must outweigh the risks by a very large margin. For a long time, humans misunderstood why sleep exists. Early thinkers assumed sleep was simply a passive state, a kind of mental shutdown, like flipping a switch to conserve energy. The brain, they believed, simply powered down when it was no longer needed. Modern neuroscience has revealed something far more fascinating. Sleep is not a shutdown. It is a shift. The brain does not stop working when we fall asleep. In many ways, it works harder, just differently. Certain systems quiet down, while others become highly active. Instead of responding to the outside world, the brain turns inward. It begins a nightly process of repair, reorganization, and recalibration that simply cannot happen while we are awake. This is why sleep is not primarily about resting the body. Muscles can rest while you are sitting quietly. Your heart keeps beating whether you are awake or asleep. Your lungs continue their rhythm. But the brain is different. It is always processing, always predicting, always regulating. While awake, the brain must manage perception, decision-making, emotional regulation, memory formation, and bodily coordination all at once. These demands are constant. There is no pause button. Sleep is the only time when the brain is released from the responsibility of responding to the external world. That release is essential. Without sleep, the brain begins to lose its balance. Thoughts become fragmented. Emotions grow louder and less predictable. Attention narrows. Creativity fades. Even basic reasoning becomes more difficult. These changes are not subtle, and they do not take weeks to appear. They can emerge after a single night of insufficient sleep. This rapid decline reveals a powerful truth. Sleep is not something the brain tolerates. It is something the brain requires. When we sleep, we are not stepping away from our lives. We are preparing the brain to continue them. Consider how the brain changes across a single day. In the morning, after sufficient rest, thinking often feels clearer. Emotional reactions are more measured. Focus is easier to sustain. As the day progresses, mental fatigue builds. Mistakes increase. Irritation comes more quickly. Decision-making becomes heavier. This daily arc is not simply about willpower. It reflects the gradual accumulation of neural strain. Every experience you have while awake slightly alters the brain. Connections between neurons strengthen or weaken. Chemical messengers are released and reabsorbed. Electrical patterns shift. This plasticity is what allows learning and adaptation, but it also creates disorder. Sleep exists to restore order. It allows the brain to evaluate which connections matter and which do not. It reduces noise. It stabilizes important patterns. It clears metabolic waste. It rebalances emotional circuits. None of this can be fully accomplished while the brain remains engaged with the outside world. This is why attempts to permanently reduce sleep almost always fail. People may push through exhaustion for days or weeks, but eventually the brain demands rest. When deprived long enough, it takes control through involuntary lapses, microsleeps, or sudden cognitive shutdowns. The brain does not negotiate with sleep deprivation. It enforces sleep. And when it does, it reminds us that sleep is not a luxury we indulge in after productivity. It is the foundation that makes productivity, stability, and awareness possible in the first place. Understanding this reframes sleep entirely. Instead of viewing it as time lost, we begin to see it as time actively invested in brain health. Each night of rest is an act of maintenance. Each hour of sleep supports clarity, emotional balance, and resilience. Sleep is not something we do because the day ends. The day ends because the brain must sleep. Section 2. The brain's energy crisis when awake. Although the brain represents only about 2% of body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of the body's energy at rest. This energy fuels electrical signaling, chemical communication, and constant monitoring of both the inner and outer world. Every thought, memory, and perception depends on neurons firing in precise patterns. These signals require glucose and oxygen, delivered continuously through the bloodstream. Unlike muscles, the brain cannot store significant energy reserves. It depends on constant supply. As the day progresses, the brain's metabolic byproducts accumulate. Neurotransmitters are released and recycled. Ion balances shift. Synaptic connections are strengthened, weakened, or newly formed. This is productive, but it is also taxing. Mental fatigue is not imagined. It reflects real biological strain. Unlike a computer, the brain cannot simply pause certain functions while keeping others running. Conscious awareness, emotional regulation, memory encoding, and sensory processing all overlap. When wakefulness continues too long, efficiency drops across the system. Attention narrows. Reaction times slow. The brain begins to prioritize survival signals over subtle reasoning. This is why sleep deprivation increases impulsivity and emotional reactivity. The brain needs a state where external input is reduced, energy demands shift, and internal processes can reorganize without interruption. That state is sleep. Section 3. What actually happens in the sleeping brain? Sleep unfolds in cycles, each lasting about 90 minutes. Across the night, the brain moves through non-rapid eye movement sleep and rapid eye movement sleep, each serving different functions. In the deeper stages of non-REM sleep, brainwaves slow dramatically. Neurons fire in synchronized patterns, creating large, slow oscillations. This is not inactivity, it is coordination. These slow waves allow the brain to regulate synaptic strength. Connections that were heavily used during the day are adjusted. Important signals are preserved. Noise is reduced. Later, during REM sleep, the brain becomes highly active. Electrical activity resembles wakefulness, yet the body remains largely paralyzed. This prevents dreams from being physically acted out. During REM sleep, emotional memories are processed, integrated, and softened. The brain revisits experiences without the full stress response of waking life. Throughout the night, these stages alternate, gradually restoring balance. Sleep is not a single state. It is a carefully choreographed sequence. Section 4. Memory, learning, and nighttime reorganization. Memory does not solidify the moment something happens. Initial experiences are fragile, stored temporarily in fast learning systems. Sleep allows these memories to be transferred, integrated, and stabilized. Research consistently shows that people who sleep after learning retain information better than those who remain awake. This applies to facts, skills, and emotional experiences. During sleep, the brain replays patterns of activity associated with learning. It strengthens relevant connections and prunes unnecessary ones. This is why insight often appears after rest. The brain has reorganized information behind the scenes. Sleep does not merely protect memory, it improves it. Section 5. Emotional regulation and the sleeping mind. Emotions are not generated by a single brain region. They arise from interactions between systems involved in threat detection, reasoning, and self-awareness. Sleep plays a crucial role in maintaining balance among these systems. When sleep is restricted, the amygdala becomes more reactive. Emotional responses intensify. The prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate reactions, becomes less effective. This imbalance explains why sleep-deprived individuals are more sensitive, irritable, and prone to anxiety. Sleep restores emotional perspective. Section 6. Sleep, stress, and the survival brain. Stress hormones follow daily rhythms shaped by sleep. Cortisol typically peaks in the morning and declines throughout the day. Disrupted sleep alters this rhythm, keeping stress signals elevated. Chronic sleep loss keeps the brain in a defensive state, reducing flexibility and increasing vigilance. Sleep tells the brain that it is safe enough to stand down. Section 7. Mental health, sleep, and psychological stability. Sleep disturbance is one of the most common features across mental health conditions. Insomnia often precedes depression. Irregular sleep patterns can trigger mood episodes. Anxiety disorders frequently involve hyperarousal that disrupts rest. Sleep is not just affected by mental health, it actively shapes it. Rested brains cope better,